Just when I thought DC Comics had the exclusive on screwing up a company with constant reboots and relaunches, here comes Mattel Toys with a relaunch of its popular Monster High line. And you would sit there and wonder, why would you want to reboot Monster High? Monster High has been selling well since about 2009 when it first came to the marketplace, when I first saw them in Toys R Us. And you would think that Mattel would sit there and continue to just let the money roll in from the reissues of various characters. But instead, some genius at Mattel decides to come up with the idea of relaunching a popular line. I believe personally that this is an emotional knee jerk reaction due to Mattel having declining Barbie sales and the loss of the Disney Princess license to Hasbro. And they're thinking that in the short term, this relaunch of Monster High will get a lot of attention, but in the long term, it's just going to alienate long term fans, and it's going to alienate new fans who will not understand what makes these dolls so appealing, because the new fans are going to listen to the older fans who tell them, oh, these older versions of the characters are great, and that these new versions, just don't capture the spirit. And when I looked at the newer versions of the Monster High dolls, the softened features, the softened design, and it just does not capture the spirit of what the characters truly are. When you look at the old school Monster High, yes, they would be considered grotesque by those who appeal to the Barbie standard, but they had their own beauty. And what the message of everybody being beautiful in their own way pretty much is lost. And also, what is lost in this relaunch is that the focus on the character, because that's what really made Monster High great, was the focus on people being judged based on the content of their character, not their outer appearance. And that's one of the things that I believe is going to be lost when you look at this reboot. And it reminds me so much of the DC Comics reboot, where the characters, pretty much everything that was great about them, was lost in some effort to appeal to a new and younger audience. A younger audience that was alienated and never really caught on to it, because you've lost what the spirit of the characters truly were. A lot of people will probably be wondering, why am I talking about Monster High? Because Monster High had a major influence on my writing. When it came down to the E-Steam series, I got inspired by Monster High. The whole concept of a monster being an adult and all grown up and working in a business setting came from Monster High. And that's what I did with the E-Steam character. I decided I'm going to take a monster, in this case a demon, and put her in a corporate setting where she would have her own adventures and focus on things like taking on bad guys in between lunch breaks and work, and dealing with work, and also dealing with fun stuff like fashion and shoes and other things. And all of that was inspired by your Monster High, and I pay a lot of respect to that concept because it's a great concept. So I always thought Mattel would, take the Monster High characters in that direction, focusing on these monsters all grown up. And they kind of did do that with the Boo York storyline, but what people, I believe, really wanted to see your Dracularas, your Claudine Wolves, and the original four, grow up and become those type of characters, and then watch Halloween and the other characters take over the roles in Monster High. But they decided to go and do with this reboot. And as I've seen over the past 20 years, reboots just don't work. Whenever you try to reboot something, most of the time, all you do is alienate the older customers, and then the new customers never really, again, catch on and capture what is really there, because people are so busy trying to change everything that was great about the original concept that the spirit and the heart of it really get lost. And that's one of the big problems with reboots altogether. I mean, it's just like saying, the one thing that really is annoying about it is like saying you failed, and then here you are trying again. And reboots again, they turn people, they split the audience. You have half the audience staying home and the other half, buying, but then they don't really stay with it because the heart of the concept is pretty much lost. And I'm really sad to see, Monster High reboot, because when I look at the dolls, again, they don't have the same heart, they don't have the same spirit. The cartoons don't have the same heart from the way it looks and the same spirit. And it looks like they're trying to project onto Monster High the same low standards that have killed Barbie over the last 5 to 10 years. When I look at the Barbie dolls these days, what really turns people away from Barbie isn't the character, because the character is the character. It is the low grade, low standard fashions they put on the Barbies, the molded on pieces, and just the overall uninspired look of the dolls. They just don't grab you. When I look at these rebooted Monster High dolls, I see the same business approach being used, the same low grade fashions, low grade materials, and the same low grade business approaches that are meant to cost out on the business spreadsheet, but really don't appeal to the customer. And that's really like passing the buck onto the customer and telling them that they have to accept substandard. Customers aren't, you can't pass things off to the customer. You have to always focus on giving the customer the very best. And when I look at this, it's like Mattel is trying to cheap out. And this was something that I had an issue with their DC Universe Classics line, especially towards the end. They were just cheaping out, not spending money on tooling, saying tooling is too expensive. Not in the short term, trying to get short-term profits, not focusing on the longer-term aspects of the brand. Again, when I look at this Monster High brand, you could have just made millions just on the reissues of characters alone. I mean, this line was so strong that the exclusives that they had at San Diego Comic-Con outsold the DC superheroes in a venue where superheroes and science fiction usually do 10 times better on exclusives. And these Monster High dolls that they did that were exclusive sold out faster than the DC superheroes that Mattel produced, or even the He-Man that they produced. And those are usually strong sellers at Comic-Con. And I look at this line again, it still has a lot of life left in it. But the problem is we have a lot of managers at companies like Mattel and Time Warner and many others who lack the vision and the creativity to take these brands and really keep them strong or even push them to the next level. And because they lack that vision, they can't see ways to continue making money without using some sort of shock marketing like a reboot or a relaunch. And they can't understand that there are ways to keep the customer interested in a product without resorting to stunts, gimmicks, and other assorted games that pretty much turn customers off and keep them from continuing to buy a product long term. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.